Does quitting porn cure PIED? Yes and no. For some men, quitting porn is exactly what they need. Their erections improve, desire returns, and confidence comes back quickly. But for other men, they quit and nothing changes. Weeks go by, sometimes months, and that's when the fear starts creeping in. They begin asking the question that scares them the most, sometimes quietly in their own mind. If I quit porn, why don't I feel fixed? Because porn may have started the problem, but eventually the brain learns a different way of responding. And once that pattern forms, removing porn does not automatically restore healthy arousal. That's why some men recover quickly and some men stay stuck. The difference is not willpower. The difference is what happened to their brain. This video is brought to you by my HarperCollins published book, Mind Over Explicit Matter. If you're ready to quit porn and reclaim your life mentally and physically, go over to drtrishleigh.com/book. I'm Dr. Trish Leigh, cognitive neuroscientist. Welcome back. Let's dive in. Okay, so to understand PIED, you first have to understand the dopamine hijack. Because for many men, PIED isn't actually an erection problem. It is a reward system in the brain problem. Your brain evolved to release dopamine when something important was within reach. Food, achievement, connection, a potential mate. Dopamine wasn't designed to reward having something, especially having something quickly. It was designed to motivate you to go get it. But modern life changed the game. Now dopamine comes instantly through scrolling, gaming, sports betting, streaming, online drama, hypersexualized social media, and of course, pornography proper. This, my friend, is the dopamine hijack, a world where the brain gets massive reward signals without effort. And porn often becomes the highest spike in an already hijacked system. Not because porn is the only problem, so that's very important. Porn is often sitting on top of a reward system that has already begun to become overstimulated all day long. The problem isn't one spike, it's thousands of spikes stacked on top of each other. Eventually, the brain adapts. That's what brains do. The reward system begins expecting a level of stimulation that real life struggles to provide. That's where the real trouble begins. So this is where you start feeling like something might be wrong. Maybe erections aren't as reliable. Maybe desire feels different. Maybe intimacy feels less exciting than it used to. Perhaps you still are attracted to your partner and you may love your partner intensely, but your body isn't responding the same way. You find yourself needing more stimulation, more novelty, and more intensity. The experience of intimacy itself no longer feels sufficient to create or maintain arousal. And the further that pattern develops, the more frustrating it becomes. So at some point you stop asking, why isn't this as exciting? And you start asking, what's wrong with me? Because eventually this stops feeling like a sexual problem and starts feeling like a confidence problem. You begin worrying before intimacy even begins. You start questioning yourself. You wonder why something that used to feel so natural to you suddenly feels so unpredictable. And that's when many men realize that they're not fighting their body. They are up against a pattern. I hear the same thing from men all over the world. Dr. Trish, I quit porn. I've been off it for weeks. I've been off it for months. So why don't I feel normal yet? That's the moment I explain something that most people have never, ever heard before. Porn may have started the problem, but your brain learned the pattern. The brain adapted to a specific style of stimulation, a specific pathway of attention, a very specific expectation of arousal, which means removing pornography is often necessary, but for many men, it is not the entire solution because the pattern remains. Okay, now this is where we start getting the answer to the question, does quitting porn cure PIED? It depends on what happened to the brain. This is what I call the desire miswire. 3 things become involved: attention, anxiety, and arousal. Attention becomes trained toward high-level novelty. Anxiety creates pressure, stress, and nervous system overactivation. Arousal becomes conditioned to highly specific stimulation patterns. Over time, the brain develops what I call a desensitization gap, the gap between what your brain has learned to expect and what real life naturally provides. So the bigger that gap becomes, the more difficult it is for real life intimacy to compete. Big gap. And this is why quitting porn helps some men almost immediately. Their gap isn't very large, but for other men, that gap has been widening for years, which means removing porn is only the first step, because the brain still has to relearn how to respond to real life stimulation. That's the difference between quitting porn and recovering from the pattern that porn trained the brain into. 2 very different things. Now I have to tell you, this is not just my opinion. I'm the messenger here, my friend. Research over the last 2 decades has increasingly shown that highly stimulating rewards train the brain through a process called reward learning. Researchers have found that dopamine doesn't simply respond to the reward itself. Over time, it begins responding to the anticipation of the reward, the cue, the trigger, the expectation. So in other words, the brain starts learning the pattern. And the more often that pattern is repeated, the stronger it becomes. Researchers now understand addiction less as a willpower problem and more as a powerful learning problem. And this actually reinforces exactly what we've been talking about here. The issue isn't just pornography. The issue is the pattern that your brain learned through repeated exposure back to pornography. And that's why so many men are actually trying to recover from this pattern that has ingrained itself into your neural pathways. When I look at QEEG brain maps from men struggling with PIED, I often see 2 patterns. This is exactly what I've identified in my research as strain brain and drain brain after reviewing thousands of brain maps. First comes the strain brain: high beta activity, overstimulation, hypervigilance, constant scanning for reward. But then after staying in that state, the brain eventually comes into drain brain. Lower alpha regulation, lower motivation and drive, less emotional presence, more numbing, less motivation. Many men describe this perfectly to me, saying that I feel exhausted, but wired but tired. One brain is running too hot, the other doesn't have enough fuel. And this is not a character flaw. This is brain dysregulation or dysfunction. Once you understand that, you stop seeing yourself as broken or having an inherent problem, and you start understanding what's actually happening at a neurological level. So here's the takeaway, my friend. I want you to remember that PIED isn't always a performance problem. Most times it's a reward system problem in the brain. The question isn't, did you quit porn? The question actually is, does real life start to feel rewarding again? Has your brain learned that again? So here's the good news. Brains are adaptive, which means if it can become miswired, it can rewire. This is what I call desire rewire. The goal isn't simply removing pornography. The goal is becoming hardwired for healthy desire. The goal is rebuilding sensitivity, reconnecting dopamine to purpose, to exercise, connection, sleep, meaningful achievement, and of course, real intimacy with your honey. So as overstimulation decreases, the reward system begins recalibrating. That's the unwire. And for many men, that's when erections become more reliable. Desire becomes more natural, connection feels stronger. Presence replaces performance anxiety. Intimacy becomes something you experience again rather than feeling evaluated for or performing. Because PIED isn't always about what the body forgot how to do. Most times it's about what the brain forgot how to respond to. And the beautiful thing about neuroplasticity is this: the same brain that learned the one pattern can learn a new one, a healthier one. Because let's be honest, some men quit porn and they still feel stuck. Many of them do. That's because the brain has become deeply conditioned. This is where brain mapping and neuromodulation technology that I use in my practice every day become incredibly powerful. Brain mapping shows us the pattern that your brain is using, strain brain or drain brain. Neuromodulation helps us to change and improve it. Brain mapping allows us to see attention dysregulation, anxiety, and arousal dysregulation. Then neuromodulation technology helps train the brain toward healthier patterns. Because if you can measure the pattern and see it with your own eyes, then you can change it. With advances in neuroscience, you can now use technology to rewire your brain instead of continuing to miswire it. This is what progress actually looks like. At first, there's a high dopamine requirement, low real-life reward, a very large desensitization gap. But then you see the shift happening. The hijack weakens, the miswire starts unwiring, the rewire takes hold, and eventually healthy desire becomes hardwired in for the life that you want and deserve. That's when motivation and presence and confidence returns. Intimacy stops feeling like work, right? What a gift. And life starts feeling rewarding again. Now, here's your brain hack for the week. Please pause and take a screenshot. These will really help you. For the next 7 days, create one dopamine win before you touch high stimulation content, before you're scrolling or gaming, definitely before pornography, let's skip that altogether, before sports betting or whatever your dopamine hit is. Ask yourself, what can I do to earn the dopamine first? Then go choose one thing. Go for a walk, lift some weights, get in the sun, complete a task you've been putting off, call a friend, do something that creates real world reward. Train your brain to earn the dopamine before consuming dopamine in quick, fast hits. Because recovery isn't just about removing the stimulation, it's about reconnecting reward to your real life. So if you're willing to try this for 7 days, hit me with Rewire in the comments. Tell me what you're going to do. I really want to know what you're going to do to earn the dopamine first. You know what I'm going to do. I'm going to box, or I'm going to decimate my dog Chewy in basketball. And you know why I always win? One reason primarily: no opposable thumbs. Okay, now I want you to imagine standing at the edge of a mountain at sunrise. No phone, no scrolling, no constant need for stimulation, just clarity and presence, focus, internal confidence. What's interesting is that this is exactly how one client described recovery to me. He didn't say I felt excited all the time. He didn't say every day felt totally amazing. What he said was this: I just realized one day I wasn't thinking about it anymore. I was more present with my wife. When I went to work, I was focused and enjoying it again. Life felt interesting and I was psyched for the future. That's the difference. Recovery isn't about chasing another dopamine high. It's about becoming fully engaged in your real life. Because recovery isn't about becoming someone new. It's about getting yourself, your true, authentic self back. So if you quit porn but erections have not returned the way that they used to be there or the way that you want, don't assume that you are broken. Your brain may simply be stuck in that learned pattern. And the good news is that those patterns can, in fact, change. So please go over to drtrishleigh.com, schedule a consultation, and get a brain map so you and I can meet. This way you can understand what's really happening and you can start building a brain that works for you instead of against you, because you deserve more than recovery. You deserve a brain that is hardwired for the life that you actually want. Okay, remember, my friend, control your brain or it will in fact control you. I'll see you next time.